The gate closes first. Wrought iron, old hinges, a sound like something being sealed shut rather than simply shut, and for a moment the only movement in frame is a single leaf skating across the gravel drive before the wind lets it go. Inside, the hallway is long and dim, lined with portraits nobody has dusted the frames of in years. Dust catches the light from a high window in slow, lazy spirals, undisturbed, as though even the air in this house has learned to move carefully. A maid moves quickly past camera, glancing over her shoulder before she speaks. Low, almost apologetic, the words coming out fast like she's afraid of being heard saying them. "Don't mention the accident," she says. "Not once. Not even if they bring it up first. We don't know yet who they are. We don't know what accident." The camera holds on the closed door at the end of the hall a beat too long, brass handle catching a thin line of light from beneath it before we cut away. 6 weeks earlier, Maya Bennett's apartment is small and honest about it. A fold-out table doubling as a desk, a chipped mug holding more pens than has ink left to give, a stack of unopened mail with red-stamped envelopes she's stopped flipping through weeks ago. The refrigerator hums louder than it should. In the back of a drawer, face down beneath a folded dish towel, is a certificate, pediatric sensory therapy, licensed practitioner, the gold seal catching light for half a second before she nudges the drawer shut with her hip, not even looking at it. She doesn't need to look at it to remember what it cost her. The flashback arrives in fragments, not explanation, the way memory works when it isn't ready to be fully faced yet. A courtroom, fluorescent lights too bright for the gravity of the room. A parent's face, twisted with an accusation Maya can't seem to answer fast enough, her own voice sounding smaller than she remembers it being. A lawyer she couldn't afford to keep past the second month, folding papers into a briefcase with an apologetic shrug. Her own mouth moving, "I didn't," before the memory cuts, unfinished, the way trauma usually is. A gavel, somewhere, though we never quite see it fall. Just the sound. Present day. She's scrolling job listings on a phone with a cracked screen, thumb moving fast past postings she's overqualified for and can't get anyway. Nobody wants a therapist with her name attached to a malpractice claim, proven false or not. The internet remembers accusations longer than it remembers verdicts. A voicemail from her sister sits unanswered on the lock screen. 3 days old now. Maya knows what it says without listening to it. Checking in. "You don't have to carry this alone." She isn't ready to hear kindness yet. It feels like something she hasn't earned back. Near the bottom of the job page, something different, plain black text on a plain white background. No logo, no company name. Live-in caregiver needed. 2 children. No therapy background required. Discretion essential. Excellent compensation. Serious inquiries only. She stares at it longer than she means to. Discretion essential catches on something in her. A small hook she doesn't examine too closely. It's beneath her training. It's also the only offer in 6 months that doesn't require an explanation for the gap in her resume, the silence where her license used to be. She applies before she can talk herself out of it. That night she packs a single suitcase, more out of habit than certainty, and calls her sister back, finally. "It's just a caregiving job," she says, before her sister can ask the real question. Nothing like before. A pause on the line. Long enough to mean her sister doesn't quite believe her. "Be careful," her sister says instead of arguing. "And Maya, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Not this way." Maya doesn't answer that. She isn't sure yet whether it's true. The interview isn't with the father. It's with a woman named Mrs. O'Dara, the estate's longtime housekeeper, sharp-eyed and careful with her words, sitting across a kitchen table that could easily seat 20 and currently seats 2, a pot of tea between them that neither of them touches. "The girls are blind," Mrs. O'Dara says, like she's stating the weather, like she said this sentence enough times that it no longer costs her anything to say it. "Have been for 2 years since their mother passed." Mr. Ashford doesn't like the word therapy used in this house. Doesn't like a lot of words used in this house, if I'm honest with you. You're not here to fix anything. You're here to care for them, feed them, keep them safe, keep them on schedule. That's the job, and it's the whole job. "What happened to the last nanny?" Maya asks because someone has to. Mrs. O'Dara's mouth tightens, just slightly, a door closing behind her eyes. She tried to do more than her job. A pause. Mr. Ashford doesn't take kindly to that. Maya sits with that a moment. And the one before her, same story, different verse. Mrs. O'Dara studies her for a long beat, the kind of look that seems to be searching for something specific and not quite finding it. Or maybe finding exactly what she was afraid of. You have kind eyes, Miss Bennet. I'll give you that much. Whether that's enough to survive this house, I couldn't tell you. She slides a folded document across the table, a confidentiality agreement thicker than any Maya has signed for a job this size. Sign that, and the room's yours if you want it. Maya signs it without reading every line. She'll wonder, weeks later, whether that was the first mistake or the first act of faith. The car winds up a long drive toward Ashford House. Not a mansion so much as a monument. All pale stone and rigid symmetry. Hedges trimmed into shapes too perfect to be anything but a form of control, and every single curtain drawn shut against a bright, cloudless afternoon, as if the house itself has decided daylight is something to be managed rather than welcomed. Maya sits with her hands folded in her lap, watching the house grow larger through the windshield, feeling smaller with every foot of gravel the car eats up. Whatever hope brought her here is fighting hard against whatever instinct is telling her to turn around, to go back to the cracked phone screen and the unopened mail and a life that at least had the decency to be honestly difficult instead of quietly wrong. She doesn't turn around. Mrs. O'Dara meets her at the door and walks her through the house at a brisk, businesslike pace. The kitchen, the staff quarters, a sitting room no one seems to sit in, a music room with a piano no one has opened in what looks like years, a fine layer of dust across the closed lid. We don't use this room, Mrs. O'Dara says simply, moving on before Maya can ask why a house owns an instrument nobody's allowed to touch. Nora and Lily are seated at a long table in a sunroom that lets in no sun, curtains drawn here too. When Maya meets them, dressed identically in pale blue, hair braided identically, sitting with a stillness that unsettles more than it should in children this young. 6 years old, and already so careful, so practiced at taking up exactly the amount of space the world has decided to leave for them. When Maya greets them, crouching to be closer to their height, Lily turns her head half a second before catching herself, some old reflex towards sound, not yet fully unlearned. Are you going to? Lily starts, voice bright with something like curiosity, like maybe hope. Nora's hand finds her sister's arm before she can finish. A small, practiced silence passes between them, wordless and complete. The kind of thing children learn quickly and permanently when hoping has gone badly for them before. More than once, enough times that hope itself has started to feel like a mistake worth avoiding. I'm Maya, she says gently into the quiet. I'm going to be staying with you for a while, if that's all right. Neither girl answers. It isn't rudeness. It's caution, worn smooth with practice. That afternoon, straightening a linen cabinet as part of settling in, Maya finds a laminated card taped to the inside of the door, edges yellowed, slightly with age, in handwriting she'll later learn belongs to their father. Each letter pressed hard enough into the card to have nearly torn it. No music above a whisper. No new scents. No unscheduled activities. No visitors without prior approval. Consistency prevents disappointment. She reads it twice, then a third time, the last line catching in her chest like a splinter. It isn't a caregiving instruction. It's a wound, disguised as a rule, written by a man who has decided that the safest way to love his daughters is to promise them nothing at all. Dinner that evening is the first time she meets Julian Ashford. He doesn't announce himself so much as simply appear at the head of the table. Dressed like he's about to attend a board meeting rather than eat with his children, tie still knotted, sleeves still buttoned. He's not cruel. He's worse than cruel. In a way, he's hollowed out, going through the motions of father the way a man goes through the motions of job he no longer believes will amount to anything, competent and absent at once. You're not here to teach them anything, Miss. He doesn't even look up from unfolding his napkin. Bennet. Maya. Ms. Bennet. He finally glances at her, briefly, an inventory rather than a greeting. You're here to keep them safe and fed and on schedule. That's all this house requires of you. Mrs. O'Dara will have gone over the rest. She has, Maya says, Can I ask why the music room is closed? Something flickers across his face, gone before it can be named. You can ask. I won't be answering it tonight. He returns his attention to his plate, and the conversation, such as it was, closes with him. Understood, she says, and means it, for now, though something in her is already quietly disagreeing. The meal passes in near silence. Cutlery against china, the loudest sound in the room. Nora and Lily eat with careful, mirrored precision, as if eating too enthusiastically might draw attention they've learned not to want. Julian leaves before dessert is served, murmuring something about calls that need making. Maya watches him go and feels, for the first time, something closer to pity than judgment. That night, unable to sleep in an unfamiliar room, unfamiliar house, unfamiliar silence pressing in from every direction, Maya hears something through the wall. Humming. Actual melody, soft and unpracticed but unmistakably attuned, coming from Lily's side of the room. It stops abruptly, hushed by what must be Nora's hand again, or a habit so deep it doesn't need a hand anymore to enforce itself. Maya lies awake a long time, staring at the ceiling, that small sound turning over and over in her mind. In the morning, before the household stirs, before Mrs. O'Dara's footsteps start their rounds, she leaves a small lavender sachet near Lily's pillow. Nothing dramatic. Nothing anyone could report her for. Nothing that violates the letter of a laminated rule. Just a seed. She told herself it was comfort. The narration says quiet and even. She knew better. Lily wakes and reaches for the sachet before anyone tells her it's there. Small fingers finding it like they already knew to look. She closes her hand around it, unprompted, and for a moment simply holds it against her cheek, breathing in slow. It's the first spontaneous motion Maya has seen from either girl since arriving. Small, but electric, the kind of thing that makes Maya's pulse pick up before she can stop it. Over the following days, Maya begins layering in interventions too small to name as therapy, each one small enough to be deniable, small enough to survive scrutiny if it ever comes. A texture blanket during story time, soft on one side and nubbled on the other, letting small hands discover difference. A window cracked just enough to let real sunlight and real air fall across the reading nook during quiet hour, instead of the flat, dim lamp light the rules prescribe. A different song hummed under her breath while braiding their hair, low enough to seem accidental. Cinnamon in the morning oatmeal instead of nothing at all. A small rebellion against a kitchen trained toward blandness. Mrs. O'Dara notices. She runs this house down to its smallest detail, and says nothing, only a look exchanged in a doorway, something almost like permission passing between them without a word spoken. One evening, drying dishes side by side, she tells Maya, unprompted, their mother used to play that piano every night. Terrible at it, actually. The girls used to laugh at her for it. A small, private smile. Mr. Ashford hasn't let anyone touch it since. It's the most Mrs. O'Dara has said about the family's past since Maya arrived, and Maya understands it for the gift it is, a silent ally, forming in the space where speech would only complicate things. Then comes the terrace. It's against every instruction taped inside that cabinet, and Maya knows it as she does it, feels the small thrill of crossing a line drawn by a man who isn't in the room to stop her. She brings the girls outside anyway, into full afternoon sun, and lifts a small spray bottle, misting a fine haze of water into the light above them. The droplets catch the sun and scatter it, and Nora's face lifts. Not randomly, toward it, her head turning slowly as the mist catches the light, her expression unguarded in a way Maya hasn't seen since arriving. Something like wonder moving across features that have spent 2 years arranged into careful blankness. What is that? Nora says, not quite a question, more a discovery spoken aloud. It's warm. It's moving. That's light, sweetheart, Maya says, voice thick. That's sunlight. Lily reaches her hand out too, uncertain, chasing the same warmth. And for a moment, both girls stand with their faces tilted up like flowers, finding true north for the first time. Someone did see. Julian stands at an upstairs window, a folder of unread documents forgotten and slack in his hand, watching his daughter's face turn toward light for the first time in 2 years. He doesn't storm downstairs. He doesn't move at all for a long moment. Just stands there, something breaking open behind his eyes that he isn't ready to name, isn't ready to let himself feel the full weight of, because feeling it means admitting how long he's gone without it. By the time he finds Maya in the hallway, his face has rebuilt itself into something colder, something that looks almost like relief wearing the mask of anger, because anger is easier to survive. What did you do? It isn't a question. It's a verdict waiting for a sentence to be handed down. Mr. Ashford, I can explain. My study. Now, the study is dim even at midday, curtains drawn like everywhere else in the house. The only light coming from a desk lamp angled down at a stack of papers Julian hasn't touched in an hour. He stands behind his desk like it's a barricade, hands flat against the wood. And for a moment he doesn't speak at all, just looks at her like he's trying to decide what kind of threat she is. I lost their mother, he says finally, quiet in a way that's more frightening than shouting would be, each word placed carefully, like stones set down one at a time. Do you understand what that means in this house? It means I've spent 2 years building something predictable around 2 little girls who lost their sight and their mother in the same year. I built rules because rules don't disappoint people. Rules don't promise things they can't keep. And you, his voice catches just barely, you walked in here 6 days ago and decided you knew better. I didn't decide I knew better than you love them, Maya says quietly. I decided I couldn't watch 2 children be trained out of hoping and call that safety. That's not your decision to make. No, she agrees. It isn't. But someone had to make it, and no one else in this house was going to. There it is, the whole architecture of the house, explained in one sentence, hers now instead of his. Every rule, every drawn curtain, every whispered warning from a housekeeper who's watched this man grieve in silence for 2 years, all of it suddenly visible, suddenly human, suddenly almost forgivable. Maya doesn't flinch, though everything in her wants to. I used to be a pediatric sensory therapist, she says. 10 years before everything. I lost my license after a malpractice claim that wasn't true. I spent a year fighting to prove I didn't do what I was accused of, and I still lost almost everything anyway. My career, my reputation, people I thought were friends. I know exactly what it costs to be doubted, Mr. Ashford. I know what it costs to have the truth not matter as much as the accusation. She holds his gaze, doesn't let herself look away, even though it would be easier. I won't lie to you about what I've done in this house. I saw 2 little girls trained not to hope, and I couldn't leave that alone. I did it because I believe in them, not because I don't respect your grief. I respect it enough to think you deserve to see what I've seen. It doesn't land the way she hopes. His face closes like a door. Pack your things, Julian says, voice gone flat and final. You'll be paid through the week. Mrs. O'Dara will arrange your transport in the morning. Mr. Ashford, that's all, Miss Bennett. The hallway afterward is long, and Maya walks it alone, the house swallowing her the way it seems to swallow everything soft that enters it, every portrait watching her go with painted, indifferent eyes. Mrs. O'Dara finds her folding shirts into her suitcase, and for a moment simply stands in the doorway. He's not a cruel man, she says finally, just a frightened one wearing a rich man's armor. Don't mistake the two. She doesn't tell Maya to stay. She doesn't have that power, but she stays in the doorway a while longer than she needs to, and that, too, is its own kind of company. Maya is halfway through packing, halfway to a life that will go back to being honestly difficult when a small voice stops her cold. Daddy, don't make her go. Lily, standing at the top of the stairs in her nightgown, one hand gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles have gone pale, her voice small, but carrying farther than anything in this house has carried in years. It's the first time either twin has spoken to their father with anything like agency. Not a request whispered to Mrs. O'Dara, not a routine answer to a routine question, but a plea that belongs entirely to her, born entirely of her own will. Julian appears at the bottom of the stairs, drawn by the sound. And for a moment, father and daughter simply face each other across a distance that has nothing to do with the actual stairs between them. Lily, she showed us the light, Daddy. Nora saw it too. Please. Her voice wavers but doesn't break. Please don't send her away. Nora appears behind her sister now, one hand finding the small of Lily's back, standing with her for the first time instead of silencing her. Two small figures at the top of a staircase, presenting a united front their father has never seen from them before. Julian doesn't answer right away. His jaw works, something visibly warring behind his eyes. When he does speak, his voice has lost its edge, replaced by something more careful, more uncertain than anything Maya has heard from him yet. One condition, he says, turning to Maya, not quite looking at her directly. A specialist verifies everything before another step is taken. Nothing without proof. Nothing without documentation. If this is real, I need to know it's real, not hope dressed up as something else. That's fair, Maya says, relief loosening something tight in her chest. That's more than fair. It isn't trust. It's a truce. For now, in a house that has run on rules for 2 years, it's enough to build on. Dr. Elaine Whitfield arrives 2 days later, brisk, precise, dressed for clinical work rather than a mansion, visibly skeptical of anything that sounds like a miracle before she's tested it herself with her own equipment, her own protocols. She sets up controlled versions of Maya's methods in the sunroom. Curtains finally, formally open for the occasion. Light and shadow shapes move deliberately in front of the girl's eyes, timed with a stopwatch, documented in a leather notebook, every variable stripped of bias as best she can manage. I want to be clear, Dr. Whitfield says to Julian, not unkindly, that spontaneous emotional responses aren't the same as verified visual perception. I've seen families mistake one for the other before. I'm not here to give you false hope, Mr. Ashford. I'm here to find out what's actually happening. That's all I'm asking, Julian says, and something in his voice suggests he said this exact sentence to himself many times before, quietly, in rooms no one else was in. The room goes still for the first test. Nora sits very straight in a chair positioned precisely in the center of a beam of light. As a shape, a simple wooden circle on a stick passes slowly through that beam in front of her. Nothing happens for a long moment. The room holds its breath, all of it, even Mrs. O'Dara, hovering unnecessarily in the doorway. Then Nora's hand rises, slow, deliberate, unmistakable, tracking the shape's movement through the air as it passes left to right. Dr. Whitfield's clinical composure cracks, just slightly, a hairline fracture in a face trained not to show surprise. That's a photic response, a tracking response. She stops herself mid-sentence, resets, writes something down with a hand that isn't quite as steady as it was 5 minutes ago. That's not supposed to be possible, given her recorded diagnosis. I need to run this again. She runs it again. The result repeats. She runs a third variation, changing the shape, changing the angle of light, ruling out every explanation that isn't the one sitting in front of her. Lily's test is different, less clinical, more human, less about the wooden shape and more about what's beyond it. Instead of tracking the shape as instructed, she reaches past it entirely, small hands stretching toward the silhouette of her father, standing near the doorway, watching. Her fingers stretch toward him like she's trying to touch something she can almost see. "Daddy," she says, "is that you? I can see that it's you." Julian's composure, held together for 2 years by sheer force of will, finally breaks. He doesn't sob. Not exactly. He just stands very still, one hand pressed briefly and hard to his mouth, and looks like a man remembering, all at once, how to hope, and finding the feeling nearly unbearable in its intensity. Dr. Whitfield turns, not to Julian, but to Maya, studying her with new and different eyes. "Whatever you've been doing, informally, without protocol, without proper documentation until now, it's working. I don't fully understand the mechanism yet, and I want to. I'd like to document this properly, formally, with your permission, and with your continued involvement." A pause, something almost like respect entering her voice. "This is significant work, Ms. Bennett. I don't say that lightly." Over dinner that evening, the first meal in a house that doesn't feel like a formality, Dr. Whitfield explains what she suspects in careful, unhurried language. that the girl's original diagnosis may have missed a narrower, less total loss than assumed, that the brain's own capacity to adapt, given the right sustained sensory input, may have quietly kept a door ajar that everyone believed had been sealed shut. "I want to be conservative with what I promise," she says, glancing at Julian. "But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hopeful." Later, in the hallway outside the sunroom, Julian finds Maya again, standing at the window where he'd watched her cross a line he'd drawn 6 days earlier. This time there's no barricade in his voice. "I owe you an apology," he says, "that I don't know how to give yet. I don't have the words for it. Not yet." "You don't have to give it today," Maya says. "You don't have to give it at all. If it's easier to just keep going forward." He almost smiles. It's the first almost smile the house has seen from him in a very long time, small and unpracticed, like a muscle remembering how to move. Weeks fold into each other after that, the pace of the house shifting in ways too gradual to notice day by day, but unmistakable in some. Formal sessions with Dr. Whitfield's team blend with the small, instinctive things Maya has been doing since her first week in the house. Texture, scent, warmth, sound, sunlight allowed finally to fall wherever it wants to fall. One by one, room by room, the curtains in Ashford House are opened. Not all at once, not dramatically, just opened the way a held breath finally, slowly lets go, the house exhaling after 2 years of holding itself rigid. Word inevitably slips past the estate gates. A member of Dr. Whitfield's team, a slip of a tongue at a conference, a single photograph of the girls in the garden taken by a passing car and sold to a tabloid. A headline runs, crude and sensational, reducing 2 years of grief and one careful, patient breakthrough into a single lurid sentence about a billionaire's miracle made. Julian's instinct, old and practiced, is to lock the gates tighter, pull every curtain shut again, retreat. Maya stops him in the driveway, car idling, security already moving to intercept the press camped at the gate. "You can hide them again," she says. "Or you can let this be what it actually is instead of what a headline says it is." Julian looks at her a long moment, then at his daughters through the car window, faces turned toward the commotion with more curiosity than fear. He doesn't lock the gates. He walks out to the reporters himself, calm and brief, and says only that his family will share more when they're ready, and not one moment before. It isn't triumphant. It's just steady, and steady is new for this house. There's a scene of pure joy in the garden that has nothing performative in it, nothing staged. The girls chasing a neighbor's dog across the lawn, half-blind laughter ringing out, Nora tracking its bounding movement with her head, Lily reaching toward a bright red ball rolling past her feet, toward a color she's only just beginning to understand the word for, saying it out loud like tasting something new. "Red," she says, delighted, uncertain, correct. "That's red. It's not a cure. It's something better than a cure in its own small, ordinary way. It's life, returning in pieces, none of them dramatic on their own, all of them adding up to something enormous." Julian, without telling Maya, has spent those same weeks quietly looking in her old malpractice case, using resources she never had access to, lawyers who owe him favors, patience she'd long since run out of. He doesn't make a speech about it. He simply tells her, one evening on the terrace where it all began, that he found what actually happened, a colleague's cover-up, buried and unresolved for years, evidence that had been sitting untouched in a filing cabinet because no one with enough power had bothered to look for it, and that he's already spoken to people who can help clear her name properly, formally, publicly if she wants that. "You didn't have to do that," Maya says, voice unsteady. "You gave me back something I thought I'd buried with their mother," he says, looking out at the garden rather than at her, like it's easier to say this to the horizon. "What's that?" Hope that doesn't feel like a risk. It isn't a romance scene. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the way the tabloids would want it to be. It's two people, standing on a terrace that used to be forbidden, saying something true to each other for the first time, without a rule or a title standing between them. Later that week, for the first time, Nora and Lily stop calling her the nanny. At dinner, unprompted, curtains open behind her, Lily says, "Maya, can you sit next to me?" No explanation needed, no fanfare, no one remarking on the shift, because it doesn't need remarking on. Just a name, used the way you use the name of someone who belongs, someone who has become simply, unremarkably, part of the family shape of the table. That same week, Julian does something no one asks of him. He opens the music room himself, dusts the piano lid with his own hands, and plays a few clumsy, half-remembered bars of a song his wife used to butcher every evening. The girls, hearing it through the house for the first time in 2 years, come running, faces bright, and for a moment the whole house sounds like a family again instead of a museum keeping careful watch over its own grief. The final sequence doesn't promise a total miracle, and the story is careful, deliberately, not to overreach that truth. The girl's vision remains partial, a world made of light and shape and color and motion rather than perfect, restored sight, and Dr. Whitfield is careful to say, so plainly in her final assessment, careful not to let anyone in the house mistake progress for completion. What offers instead is enough, more than enough. A life reopened, a family unfrozen, a house finally, fully awake. There's a callback to that first terrace scene, the mist rising into sunlight. Only this time it isn't secret, isn't stolen against a rule taped inside a cabinet that no longer exists, torn down weeks ago by Julian's own hand. Julian is there too now, sleeves rolled up, spray bottle in his own hand, laughing in a way the house hasn't heard from him in years, mist catching the afternoon light as his daughters turn their faces up toward it together, toward him, toward a version of their life none of them quite believed they'd get to have. A quiet coda follows. No courtroom victory lap, no dramatic press conference, just a short, still scene of Maya sitting alone on the terrace steps, reading a letter that confirms her license has been formally reinstated, her name cleared in writing, in ink, permanently. She doesn't cry, not quite. She just sits with it a moment, the letter light in her hands, the way you sit with something you worked a very long time to get back, letting it be real before you let yourself feel anything about it. The final line belongs to one of the twins. Simple, plain, disarming in the way only a child's honesty can be, delivered without any awareness of how much weight it carries. I used to think the dark was all there was, Lily says, her small hand finding Maya's on the terrace step. Then you came. The camera pulls back for the last wide shot. Ashford House from the outside. Every curtain open now. Every window lit. Light pouring through rooms that spent 2 years in shadow, spilling out onto the lawn where a father and 2 daughters stand together in the last gold hour of the afternoon. The narration closes gently, without lecturing, without insisting on its own meaning. Some houses need rebuilding with brick and stone. Others just need someone brave enough to let the light back in.